Good morning.
Morning.
How is this morning's keynote? Pretty amazing, huh? And now we're here to make it a big deal, and we're going to talk about what we all want to talk about, efficiency and cost savings, right? So I will turn this over to our presenters who are wanting to introduce themselves, but I did want to make you all aware that we have drink station at the back of the room. If you have a situation or an emergency, raise your hand and I will come to you. I'll be sitting at the back of the room watching. There will be a Q&A. When we do the Q&A at the end of the session, I'll bring the mic to you. We don't have to get up and walk around and be in a spotlight. And as we'll remind again at the end of the session, please don't forget to register your feedback and rate the session in the CSCMP Edge app today. And with that, I am going to turn it over to our teams from Five Below.
Thank you.
Awesome. Good morning, everybody. Lisa and I were commenting that everybody must be worried this is a sermon, because just like church, we filled up from the back and the front row is empty. So hopefully you guys are ready for the 2-hour sermon that's coming. We are not going to be, good, hype guy. We are not going to be Morrison, so I would just call that out right now. We will not bring that level of energy and excitement and tell that great of a story, but I am really excited to be here today with Lisa Ashman from Five Below, and I will let her introduce herself in a little bit, but I want to talk about Breakthrough for just a couple of minutes up front. And my name is Spude, and I'm our Vice President of our Freight Solutions at Breakthrough. I've been with Breakthrough for about 10 years. I've been working on the analytics platforms and the solutions that we've been bringing to now 100 shippers in North America, and I'm really excited to share one of the amazing stories in Five Below with you today. So a little bit about Breakthrough. We've been in business for about 20 years now, and we started on the energy management side of things. And so our core product is really an alternative to the DOE retail index, where shippers are now reimbursing carriers based on the actual route and the actual cost plus buildup along that route for fuel. And so our core product really brought us to the marketplace for about 14 years, when we then realized and were challenged by our shippers that we sit on a pretty amazing data set, which I'll elaborate on in a little bit, but that really sparked us to move into these freight solutions spaces. And so for the last 7 years, we've been building out those solutions which are tailored and custom to each of our engagements with shippers. And then ultimately, also led us to a sustainability footprint. So our mantra for 20 years, regardless of the service or the area that we've been playing in, has been about reducing cost, gallons, and ultimately emissions through transparency. And so all of these products maintain those principles, and we're going to elaborate more on the freight solutions today. The key to all of our freight solutions that you will hear about, and that certainly I would love to engage with you more later if you're interested, really comes down to the ecosystem of data that we sit on. There are a lot of data providers out there. There are a lot of benchmarking providers out there. I think what differentiates Breakthrough from anything else in the marketplace is the cleanliness of our ecosystem of data. So it comes from the fuel recovery feed that we have, which is now 28 billion in spend. And from a data perspective, it is clean transacted rates that are being invoiced on, meaning it happens at the end of loads in a life of a load cycle, and we're getting it, and that's data that actually happens after a load is closed out. So it's very, very clean, and because we're calculating everybody's fuel program for them and understanding the data source, it is exclusive of fuel or accessorials, so very clean. I think the other thing is it is shipper data for shippers. So it's not a mix of carrier, broker, load board, RFP, any type of other data. It is transacted shipper-only rates that feeds both the ecosystem, the benchmarking modules, and then all the analytics that empower that. So specifically freight solutions. I talked about the shipper-only benchmarking, so we are a rate benchmark for a lot of our shippers, about 100 of our shippers in the ecosystem today. The system has been using AI or machine learning for probably 5 years now already, and it's coming up with recommendations. And those recommendations are based on internally looking at each shipper's network. How can I leverage my existing carrier base differently? How can I leverage my existing rate structures differently? How can I balance my network? So internally facing. but then also externally. So where am I compared to the benchmarks? What other carriers are out there in the ecosystem or through FMCSA data that I can leverage to continue to balance and right-size my network as well? It is a carrier search functionality, so understanding where all of these shippers in that 28 billion are moving and how they're moving and how to connect backhauls. The technology is doing all that behind the scenes to bring additional asset-based carriers to our shipper networks. And then lastly, and probably most recently, a differentiated RFP experience. So leveraging that ecosystem of now 200 shippers where we see what they're doing from an RFP perspective, bringing those best practices forward and then being able to deliver a tailored solution to our shippers is kind of the latest product in our portfolio of freight solutions. So I've talked a little bit about Breakthrough. I want to give Lisa a chance to talk about herself. She's going to introduce herself and walk you through a little bit of the story and recent history and some of the strategies for Five Below.
Thank you, Jared. My name is Lisa Ashman, and my current role at Five Below is the Outbound Transportation Manager. At Five Below, we use a pull agent distribution system, so we have 5 ship centers, and they deliver to 105 pull agents that we have. Those pull agents then operate our final mile to our stores. In addition to that, we have a private fleet at Five Below that is growing, and they do both line haul to those terminals as well as store deliveries. For Five Below, one of the footprints that we have and what we're working on was incorporated 2 years ago with what we call the triple-double. We have this growth plan. Right now, Five Below is one of the leading retailers in growth. We're growing at 17% year over year. And with this triple-double, we have a plan to triple the size of the stores that we have from 1,700 currently today to 3,500, as well as double our sales. With that, we're also growing our what we call a ship center, a distribution center, to include 3 more within the next 7 years. With that, the only place that we're not currently in the United States is that upper Northwest. And with that, with the 3 ship centers that I was talking about us opening, the next one is going to be in the New York, Eastern Pennsylvania area, which can service our heaviest volume of stores, which is on the East Coast. Five Below was originated in the Philadelphia. That's where our corporate office is. And that East Coast and that Northeast module has a lot of our stores, so we will be adding another ship center there. Next, we will be going to the Reno area or Nevada. We haven't bought the land yet, but it is something the construction team is currently working on. When we open that facility, we will be servicing that Northwest market. We're hoping to do that within the next 2 years. Currently, all of our West Coast operations is serviced out of our Buckeye, Arizona facility. And the northern Midwest states is serviced out of Indianapolis. And here, one of the most important things of Five Below, a lot of people don't know what Five Below actually is unless you go into a store. Some people say, you know, it's a cold weather, it's a refrigerated. But what it is, Five Below is an on-trend store that we seek trends for the teen and tween market. We are a niche provider to that market. Our stores are based for kids. And with that, you know, it gives parents the flexibility to be able to go into a store to see those items that are on trend that provide a value. We are one of the only store that a parent can take a child in there and, you know, give them $5 and they can come out with goods that they want. We search those trends, and that is what our store is filled with. And with that, we focus on our stores, how we visibly display those products to attract the customers that we have. Our people are what's important. We always call our store members and our store personnel the wow crew, because they provide that wow experience. They're, you know, talking to the customers, talking to the kids, making sure that they have that ability to, you know, to share what is on trend at a valuable price. Additionally, we have opened 5 stores within the last year that are more of a party store atmosphere. So not only do they have the on-trend things for kids, but they also have things for parties, things that kids would like, like, that they can go in there and they can review those things and purchase those things. And with that, we have leveraged our transportation network with the help of Breakthrough, and we have saved money. Another one of the things that Five Below is known for is holding the penny hostage. That is one of our mottos. Because of the value that we provide, most of our products are $1 to $5. We hold that penny hostage, and Breakthrough has allowed us to be able to decrease the cost of our transportation network, as well as in the fuel recovery market.
Thanks, Lisa. So I want to talk a little bit about the roadmap with Five Below, and then we're going to get into a little bit of a Q&A with Lisa to help tell her story. So we met Five Below probably in the beginning of 2022 and kind of worked through their solicitation or contracting process to understand how best to implement fuel recovery. And we actually implemented that in August of 2022. Interestingly, typically when we implement with a client, I would say most often we do it through an RFP because it makes sense, you're adjusting your contracts, this is just a change to that. Five Below actually wanted to realize the savings faster, didn't want to go through and wait for the next RFP cycle for them, so they actually implemented through a conversion, meaning that they went contract by contract with the carriers and adjusted that outside of that RFP cycle. Then when we talk about year one savings, they had a 50% reduction in their fuel spend in that first year on the program. So a pretty incredible savings lift. And Lisa, do you remember through that, were there any loss of carriers? Were there any major hiccups from a negotiation standpoint in adjusting those contracts?
No, so with Five Below, we're in our 22nd year this year. One of the things that's important to us is that we have true partnerships, true transparent relationships with our carriers. We actually did not lose any carrier that we had, nor was there any pushback. Breakthrough was able to provide that transparent data that we were able to show with the carriers so that they would understand the system and how we could move forward with that.
And I think that's some of the biggest fear of both through an RFP or not is like, what's going to happen? Is it a bucket shift? Am I going to lose carriers? They're just going to walk away. And so I encourage you not to take it from Breakthrough because everybody would think that's a tainted view. So, see Lisa today or come after, or, certainly she has her contact info here. Talk to Lisa directly, and she can even probably share how they negotiated some of those discussions with the carriers in that process. Then in February of 2024, we implemented the Freight Solutions portfolio with Five Below. We'll talk more about that specifically, so I won't dwell too much on that at this point in time. And most recently in July, so we just had the other part of the Five Below network, their inbound volume, move on to fuel recovery. So super excited about the additional savings unlock for Five Below this past summer. Anything you want to add on the timeline, Lisa?
Just with that, the inbound, at Five Below, we have the outbound team, the inbound team, and then also the new store team. And one of the initiatives this year for 2024 was to simplify. With that, the inbound team, like Jared said, they saw the success that the outbound team had, and they implemented and have shifted over for their fuel recovery options. We are glad to share that with our new store team and hoping to bring them on as they shift as well.
All right, so we're going to move into a little bit of a Q&A with Lisa, and we'll make sure we leave time for Q&A at the end as well. So if you have questions you want to ask directly, we'll make sure we have time for that. But first, I want to just highlight that 17% year-over-year growth is significant. That is no small feat for sure. And then certainly the planned trajectory of growth still very strong as well. And we talked about how we've worked with Outbound, we've worked with Inbound. You've talked about adding new stores and new locations. That's all super exciting. And that has to come with some really significant challenges. Lisa, can you talk about some of the major challenges that the team has had to face and overcome through that period of growth?
Yeah, so, we are growing exponentially, and it's a little bit different. Like Jared said, we are a brick and mortar store. So we only do about 2 or 3% annually on e-commerce. So we are a brick and mortar store. We, have those new construction facilities, but that's where people go to purchase our products. Our e-commerce is minimal, if you will. And some of the challenges that we faced before we started with Breakthrough was we had all of these different different entities that we went to be successful. It was a very tedious and time-consuming process. We would have spreadsheets, we would have dashboards, we would have all these different applications that provided us with the information that we needed, but it was cumbersome. We couldn't go to any one platform and provide the information that we needed to make a sound decision for our network.
You talked about inbound and outbound. And I don't personally work on the account, so I'm not exactly sure all the day, in and out of the operations, but it sounds like those are two totally separate teams.
They are.
Has that dynamic changed now that they're both on the same program and that you're working collaboratively with this growth structure?
It's funny that you said that, Jared, because he doesn't know this, but so historically, the inbound team and the outbound team have worked in silos. We have used different platforms, different initiatives, and then to move forward. But because of the success that the outbound team has had using Breakthrough and the Felix application, they have shifted over. They are using it as well. But just last week, our two teams combined. So inbound and outbound now fall under the same umbrella, report to the same hierarchy, so that we can work even closer together. It's a part of that initiative to simplify using the same tools that have provided successful within Five Below.
And you talked about a new terminal kind of coming out west. Mm-hmm. Do you feel comfortable sharing the note of how many new terminals are coming on?
Yeah, so this year we're doing an additional 54 RFPs. Those are for our pool agents. Out west, we have 3 ship centers that we will be opening, again, in western New York, eastern Pennsylvania, Nevada, and then up in Wisconsin.
Awesome. I'm going to move on to the next slide here. So we talked about Five Below not implementing fuel recovery in an RFP. One of those reasons is they don't historically do an annual RFP event like many shippers do. They sort of evaluate it on an ongoing basis. They might put some of their network out to bid at a particular time. So it was a challenge for them not to want to wait to that inevitable, not picked point in time to run an RFP and implement fuel recovery. Can you talk about that decision or that strategy for Five Below?
Yeah, so for Five Below, it's all, like I said, it's all about the partnerships and understanding, that transparent relationship. We haven't done an RFP, a national RFP, since October of 2022. We have done what we call a rate refresh. Whenever a new terminal opens, a new market, we will put that specific lane up for bid for an RFP, but that's only with our incumbent carriers. This is provided. We don't want our carriers to think that we're going to go out and bid those new lanes every year. We want that partnership to continue to grow. So we do offer that to all of our incumbent carriers. Over the last 3 years, we've only onboarded 2 new carriers because they provide a niche environment for us. So our partners are aware that, they're in it for the long haul. We want to continue to grow that. And with this, if you look at this, before we started with Breakthrough, we had carriers that were coming to us and they're like, we appreciate the partnership that we have, totally transparent on both sides. And they came to us and they're like, we think we're paying you too much. Not many carriers will do that to a shipper, but they appreciate that partnership that we have. When we started working with Breakthrough, this first slide shows you our rates were all over the place. The benchmarking, that line, Five Below was way above that in many different lanes. As we worked with the Breakthrough team and our carriers, we are now on point and under market on almost every lane that we have. And the tools that Breakthrough provides allowed us to reduce our cost per lane, as well as share that information with our carriers. It's as Jared was saying, it's a pool of information that's very clean. And so when we go to talk to carriers, we have that information that we can share so that we're all transparent.
Yeah, as Lisa talked about this chart here, we affectionately at Breakthrough call this the Kenny Loggins chart. It's sad that I talk about this now with some younger professionals and they don't understand what that means. But that line is essentially the benchmark. And so any dots or lanes that you're seeing above that are actually in the danger zone, which is above a benchmark. And so what you're seeing is the before and after of those direct negotiations that Lisa leveraged through the analytics and the visibility that the tool and the team provides.
That's correct.
So you kind of hit on one of the questions I was going to ask. So what triggers a mini bid or a rate negotiation? I think you highlighted that. Anything else you want to make sure you cover?
No, so with that, we, as we continue to grow, our terminals, they typically will do anywhere from 6 to approximately 40 stores that they deliver final mile to. We are, like I said, 54 just throughout this year. Anytime those new terminals, those markets open, we will provide an RFP to our incumbent carriers so that those stores can be serviced efficiently. The most important thing for Five Below is that we get our freight to the stores quickly and efficiently. We have a timeline that we try to meet of 10 days from the date of allocation to the time that it hits the store, and all of those metrics in between there. So that includes, just for the operations side, allocations, picking, shipping, transportation to the terminal, final mile, and then to the store. Our goal is always to hit that in under 10 days, and so it's very important that we open those pool agents and that to establish to service those stores. That is when we open that RFP up for any carrier that we currently have.
All right, switching gears a little bit. So what we're trying to depict here on the left are the multiple areas that Five Below had to go to gather information, to do any type of analysis or deep diving on anything to really implement strategies. And so we realized really quickly with our relationship with Five Below that that was an area we needed to help them with. We had to help them be able to find information quicker. In most of the cases, try to bring them that information so you didn't have to go digging. And so for Five Below specifically, the Felix platform actually becomes now that centralized source of truth where they can go not only find information but also be pushed information for them to take a look at and act on. So Lisa, can you talk about the shift from the left side of the screen to kind of the right side of the screen and what that's done for the team?
Yep, so as I was speaking, Five Below is still in its infancy. At 22 years old in the retail market, we didn't have a lot of applications or a lot of resources available to us. Before we started with Breakthrough, to be honest, it was a nightmare. We had, spreadsheets, a spreadsheet on carriers, a spreadsheet on rates, a spreadsheet on terminals. We had applications that we used. We have our own proprietary TMS system. So all of these things were, all over the place, and we didn't have one central place that we could go to provide this information as we were researching it. Now we have Felix, and this is my favorite tool. I use this tool all day, every day. It provides not only clean data, but it shows me that data that I'm researching for benchmarking and compliance, carrier options, when we are out there looking for a new carrier, but I can share that data with carriers, and it is transparent data. They have the information because of the tools that Felix provides us. We can share that information and have those conversations. Breakthrough, the Felix app gives us that information that we can start to share and have those transparent conversations when rates are needing shifting, when we need a new carrier because the carrier, our network, doesn't have the carriers in place to service those markets efficiently.
So for you, Lisa, it was not only consolidation of data that you maybe didn't have access to, or it was consolidation of data, it was getting data you didn't have access to. Is it a huge lift from an efficiency perspective as far as like getting things out to market and getting them back into the system as well?
That's correct. So when our final mile team, our final mile team is responsible for the pool agents and then the deliveries to store. What they do is they go out and they go to the markets and they find those providers. Then they come back to the outbound team and they say, we're going to open a market, for example, in Nashville. I will then run that rate and get that data compiled. So Nashville is serviced by our ship center in Georgia, in Forsyth, Georgia, and get that rate and that benchmarking. It also provides me with the data. What carrier has a good footprint in that? Is that one of the Five Below's carriers? Because then I can go directly to those carriers and it's already in their footprint, and then it'll be more efficient. So not only is it efficient for Five Below and having all the data there, it provides also additional information so that we can go and get the best possible solution for us.
Awesome. So what you're looking at here are some of the modules that Five Below has access to through the Felix platform. So there's a compliance module, Smart Price is really that benchmarking capability, the carrier search functionality, creating carrier scorecards on demand with custom, you can choose kind of exactly what goes in there, which is what Lisa's talking about when she's having conversations with carriers, and then certainly market updates. Lisa, I want to hone in specifically on compliance, because this is something fairly new for Five Below. So can you talk about the story with compliance and what that's unlocked for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So at Five Below, we award lanes based on, not only the rate, but also the service that they provide. Compliance, it is effective for the planners that we have at Five Below, because we award those lanes, and then it's the planner's responsibility to tender those loads out, to give those loads to the primary carrier. We hold them accountable with this compliance tool to make sure that that's who they are sending those loads to. Say that, for example, they don't have a trailer for the primary carrier. They may use another trailer, another secondary carrier. Then that compliance score gets hit on our transportation planner department. We hold them accountable to make sure that, again, we're holding that penny hostage, and we're giving that lane, that load, to the carrier that should have that award. Specifically on that, they weren't ever held accountable previously. So not only can we hold our transportation planners accountable to that they're using the carriers that have been awarded those primary lanes, but we can also hold our carriers responsible. We give them a volume forecast. For example, we're going to have 10 loads this week. They say that they are awarded that based on that volume. If they don't have capacity, they don't have compliance, they're not in compliance with us. So with that compliance tool, it's not only for our planners, but it's also for the carriers to ensure that everybody's being held accountable to the network.
I think it's really important that you call out the duality in that accountability, because I think too often when we're talking with shippers, it's just outward focused, but it's really, it's a two-way street, and especially in this market where building relationships with carriers is really, really important. I really admire the fact that Five Below is looking internally first to make sure you're living up to your expectations before going out and holding other people to that same standard. All right, so these are a couple of screenshots that kind of walk through what the advanced analytics screens look like. It's certainly, we talked about tailored solutions. We want to make sure we're either pushing information to you, pulling information from you, or giving you access to tools that you haven't had before. And each of those looks a little bit different. Anything else you want to elaborate from a tool, a data, or a resource perspective through the solutions you have?
Well, some of the things, like I said, we onboarded a couple carriers recently within the last 2 years. And the reason that we were able to do that is the tools that are provided by Breakthrough through Felix, we could go out and we could look for carriers that it's a good footprint. We have a couple difficult, challenging lanes, if you will, that are serviced out of our Indianapolis Ship Center. One is to Fargo, North Dakota. The other is to the Minneapolis area. And so a lot of carriers, they don't mind going, but they can't get back, right? So the tool allowed us to go out and speak to those carriers to be able to, it's a win-win solution. With all of our carriers, we always want it to be a win-win. So we went out and searched, and this tool made it available to us to find those carriers.
Does your team leverage the Advisor publication?
We do.
So the Advisor publication, we have one for fuel, we have one for freight, and we also have another for sustainability. It's published on a monthly basis. From a freight perspective, it's absolutely looking at the forecast. How is your team leveraging that information?
So, and that's a great point, Jared. So with the advisories, we can talk to our carriers. We always go to our carriers if there's a shift in market. Our carriers, we ask them to do the same thing. And the advisory will give us that information, what the forecast is looking like in the market, and we can share that with our carriers. Right now, we just did a rate refresh at the beginning of the year. We can go out and say, what, the advisory is looking as if the market isn't going to shift until mid-2025. We will hold those prices, but if the shift changes and the advisory will share that detail with us, we ask our carriers to come to us. Like I said, we always want it to be a win-win, and we want it to be successful for all of us involved.
So Lisa, this is the money slide. This is the brag slide for you because it's all the work that you put into it. But an absolutely incredible number. So through the short time that we've interacted with our freight solutions, Five Below has reduced 62% of the rates that they have on file, and on average, those rates have reduced by 6%, which has led to a 14% savings for your organization. Can you talk to that work? Can you talk to that number, what you're willing to share?
Sure. So with those numbers, this was all done with the Breakthrough tool. It gave us those benchmarking. It provided us with that information to start those conversations. With that, we could go to our carriers and say, this is what the market is showing this rate is. You're paying this. Can we come closer? Can you beat this? We had a successful discussion among all of our carriers. Every single one of our carriers came down across the entire network. We didn't have any carriers or any lanes that were not impacted positively because of this. And it's a matter of going out and getting that tools. And with that, with 105 lanes, one of the tools that you can use is the mass. You can do a upload of all of those lanes, and it'll provide the information instantaneously back to you. So it provided us with a way to go out there and have those conversations, provided us which carrier at Five Below is using that is out of market and how much they are out of market, provided us with a printout that we could take with those carriers and show them that how much out of market they are and have those conversations to reduce those costs.
So I think ultimately then, Lisa, everybody wants to know what's next. So, as you've achieved a great savings now, everybody's worried about what's happening in the marketplace. Is the market going to turn? You're trying to implement some significant growth strategies at the same time. What are you focused on next? Where do you see the Five Below transportation strategy going?
Yep, so with that, like I said, we don't do an RFP annually or every year. We're trying to get into a cadence where our partners understand that we're going to continue growing with them. That is our goal. We want to have those transparent relationships. We also now have our private fleet, which is continually to grow. We started with about 35 trucks this year and are hoping to double that by the end of the year. So our private fleet is growing, and the sustainability issues that we have within the private fleet as well as our carriers. Breakthrough offers a sustainability program that that offers how to grow in that phase. With consumers, they are looking at that, and when they have two companies that one has a better sustainability program than the other, typically they're always going to choose that sustainability company that shows that. We are right now at Five Below, we have 66% of our carriers are high on the SmartWay platform, and we're continuing to expand that.
Yeah, so Lisa hit it right on the head. 66% of their carriers are working with our SmartWay ranking of 5, which is incredible. I think the industry average for retailers is about 20% are in that category of 5. So being 3 times better than the industry average amongst the significant growth that they have and being incredibly cost conscious and focused, I think is just a testament to their focus on sustainability, their look forward, but also a proof point that it's possible, right? I think everybody thinks, hey, sustainability comes at a cost. It doesn't have to, but it does take work, it does take focus, it does take analytics to help support that, and certainly the right carrier relationships nurtured over time to make that happen. So a really incredible stat for Five Below there. I think one last shout out, you saw at Breakthrough's conference how we're planning to leverage AI a little bit more through the tool, which is super exciting. Outside of Breakthrough, how do you think you see AI working into the Five Below strategy in the future? Yeah,
so I think that AI is we are in our infancy using AI at Five Below. As we do value and hold the penny hostage and things like that, but we are currently exploring different opportunities to bring AI through that, not only with our transportation department, but also throughout operations as well. So as we continue to learn and see how we can efficiently incorporate that in our organization, we will move forward in that space.
Awesome. So just a couple of key things to wrap up here. We'll turn it over to Q&A. So first, I don't think it's rocket science, and this has been preached forever, right? You need to be leveraging data analytics and efficiency tools to help you make better decisions. That's not a surprise. I think the second piece, though, to that is you need to be using that appropriately. And we talked this morning with Morris Morrison about relationships, right? And so using the Five Below case study, right? Leverage that data and that technology transparently to enable better conversations with your carrier partners, boosting your accountability both as an organization and with those providers. And then lastly, and I think most importantly, we all can find data. We can all find 20 different tools to help us from an analytics perspective, but making sure you're partnering with somebody who has an unbiased perspective on that and is going to truly seek out the best interest of you as a shipper is the most important part to this entire journey. Before I turn it over to Q&A, I'm being told by my marketing team that I have to make sure I put a good plug in. So a couple things we do have. First of all, we'd love to chat with anybody who has additional questions after the Q&A here. We also have a booth, 333, so it should be really easy to remember. Down on the exhibit floor, we'd love to connect with you there. For shippers only, we're having a whiskey tasting, and I have tickets, and my partner back there has tickets. So if you'd like to do some whiskey tasting, that's great. And the last thing here is we do have a sustainability session this afternoon. That's at 1:45, and we'll be joined on stage by Beam Suntory, who's going to talk about their pretty incredible sustainability journey. And so would really, if you're interested in hearing a little bit more about how these all tie together, attend that session at 1:45 today.
And one thing I would like to add too that I failed to mention, as we talk about relationships this morning and partnerships, one of the greatest assets that Breakthrough also has is their team members. That partnership, along with Five Below, it's with the Five Below mantra. It's transparent, it's hardworking, it's honest. And with Five Below, we work with Nate and Christy, and I tell you, they're always right there to help, always there to answer questions. They will provide us with data. They will initiate some of those conversations with, our carriers if they have any questions. That they're the experts in it, and they help us along the way. It is a true partnership, not only with us and our carriers, but also us and Breakthrough, that allows us to all be successful.
Thanks, Lisa. And I want to thank Lisa for her leadership and insight as well. So with that, I think we're ready to turn it over to some Q&A if anybody has any questions.
So for anybody who has a question, raise your hand. I'll bring the mic to you so it can be heard. And while I'm walking there, please don't forget to log into your Edge app and fill out the survey on the session. So was that your hand?
Hello, I'm Kelly with Conager Brands. Question for Lisa. So as shippers, I think a lot of shippers struggle with how many carriers to have within their trans network. What is not enough? What is too many? If you're willing to share, I was just curious, how many carriers outside of your private fleet do you have within your network? And then maybe if you're able to share your overall trans spend with your inbound and outbound, just for point of reference.
Absolutely, and that's a great question. And I think in this market, you will see a lot of shippers are reducing the number of carriers that they have. When Five Below started, like I said, 22 years ago, they were pretty much 3PL based. Last year, 2 years ago, it was an 80-20 split, with 80% being 3PL and 20% being asset-based. Currently, we have shifted that because of the market availability, and now it's about 70% asset-based and 30% 3PL. We will always need to have the 3PLs in our space. At Five Below, our volume is somewhat of a hockey stick. They say it's a hockey stick. We're getting ready to go into our largest, season of the year, being the end of the year. But with that, so typically when we started looking at this, Outbound and Inbound had 35 carriers across the network, and we're reducing that. Simplified, again, is that mantra of the year, and our goal is to be at 15 by the end of the year outside of the Five Below private fleet.
Hi there, my name is Victoria with SCT Advisory. So you mentioned 17% growth year over year, 4 new sites coming up. When you guys were doing your network design, did you use the rate information to influence where you were going to go next, or was it primarily based off of just markets that you wanted to get to?
Well, both. So the initial ask was, if we go to this location, what is going to be the rate cost, the freight spend at that spot. And Breakthrough allowed us, had the tools and the resources available so that we could say, this one's a good one, this one's not. And we used both of that. So it's primarily based on the service to our stores. Again, our stores are the most important brick and mortar that we can efficiently serve those. But in those spaces, we were able to leverage the Breakthrough tool to provide us with those lane costs.
Thank you. I'm Abhijit from Schneider Electric. Two questions. One is related to the carrier split, national versus regional. Basically, did you achieve more savings in national versus regional carriers? And did you have to change the balance of volume among those carriers, like national carriers versus regional carriers? And the second question is basically, does Breakthrough also provide any support on backhaul optimization with other shippers so that you reduce your overall transportation rates? Again, the data privacy is the key, but still they can at least marry your data with other data to improve the backhaul.
Great question. I'll let you take the first two. It was about national versus regional carriers and that split.
So, Five Below, one of the greatest things about Five Below is their community, the community outreach that they do. So we do have some regional-based carriers near our ship centers for that specific reason. We also have national carriers that provide that overall network and that overall footprint to make sure that we are able to efficiently service our stores. We use both, and some of the national carriers that we've had have come on in the last 2 years have been national carriers as we continue to grow. With that, we see the benefit in both. We have not gotten, some of the carriers, as I say, we're reducing our fleet. Some of it's because those carriers have gone out of business, right? We have those conversations with why we're reducing the different carriers that we have, but a lot of those carriers that were reduced were because they went out of business. So we continue to grow our network, and those carriers that we have both regionally and nationally provide us with that detail that we need.
And specific to the backhaul question, so in our carrier search tool, the algorithm that calculates a carrier match, so we give you a carrier match rating, it's actually looking, if it's a match of 5, which is the best, it is a natural backhaul, meaning that carrier is running that lane in the opposite direction. So it's going to prioritize those carriers more. So algorithmically, the tool is naturally doing that. We have also help make that connection. The aggregate, anonymize, and protect data makes that a little bit more challenging than just saying, hey, why don't you go talk to Five Below? Right. And so in that case where we can find a significant value add, we'll ask each to make sure it's appropriate, and then we make the introduction. We stay out of the contracting, discussing carriers, how do you operationalize it, but absolutely make those connections on behalf of our clients. Yeah. And does that answer your question for that? Okay.
And sorry, and to piggyback on that, Jared, one of the carriers that we did, that's exactly what we did. We found that backhaul lane was good for them. It was also a good from our network, and we were able to match that up. It's a win-win for all of us. Our carrier, they have a backhaul lane, a head haul lane, and it moves the freight efficiently.
And I think saying that carrier score made me realize, I think I said the SmartWay score backwards before.
It's 1.
Yeah, so I'm sorry. Five Below uses 66% of their carriers have a SmartWay score of 1. So this is America, so bigger is always better, right? I don't know why we're doing the backwards, but majority of their carriers are a SmartWay score of 1, meaning they are the best rating in SmartWay. I just want to make sure I clarify that. It just dawned on me. So thanks for that question. Any other questions? Behind you, yep.
For Breakthrough, how does a carrier get into your network? Does it have to be asked by a shipper, or can you just come to you direct and say, put us in there, and then?
No, good question. That's a question we do get a lot. And so right now, the strategy being just really focused on clean shipper only data, there's no way to input a carrier's network into the tool and the algorithm. That data all comes from the existing fuel recovery feed, as well as FMCSA data, so inspection data and some of those other things. So I realize that sometimes that is a gap, but right now the tool only looks to keep the integrity and cleanliness of our data at actual transacted loads that have flowed through the system from a fuel recovery or a freight perspective, depending on the level of client. But great question. Yeah, up here we have one. And I think probably this might be time for our last one, but I'm happy to connect with people after.
Absolutely.
Daniel Caldera, Universal Warehouse Company. I guess my question is in regard to some of the data that's collected from Breakthrough. So that's data that is flowing through shippers. It's clean data. That's been moved. What about data that's been bid but not moved? That has a lot of value, I imagine.
It is not in our system today.
It's
the
not.
only data, that 28 billion, only represents actual transacted, completed loads that have been cleansed and pulled into the system.
Okay. Would you have access? Would shippers because I imagine that has a lot of good information as well. It may not be utilized for whatever reason it wasn't put in their network, but
Sure.
having that data.
So we run RFPs on an annual basis, so we do actually have a plethora of other data. The only data in the tool, though, is that transacted load data.
Thank you.
Yep. I think we're at time, so I want to make sure we stay on time with this with the conference schedule. Thank you all for attending. Huge thank you to Lisa for sharing her story and being brave enough to get up here and talk about some of those things. If you'd like to catch Lisa or I after, we'll be here hanging out for a while, and then certainly I'll be at the booth most of the day. So thank you very much.
Thank you,
everyone.